That's right, we're talking about Death Stranding, not even the second one. Now I know what you're thinking, what's the point, old man? Ugh, you might as well be talking about Pong. Get with the times, old boy, talk about Arc Raiders. Now that game's cool. But Death Stranding is a game that is still played today and is still rated extremely high, so I thought, hey, you know, why not? Who doesn't love a Kojima game, right? 37 hours later, and you know what I think about this game? I don't know what to think. The truth is, I still don't know if I like Death Stranding as a whole. That's the most honest thing I can say about it, and the thought has followed me from the first hours of the game to the free roaming epilogue after the credits. Every time I try and make any sense of my experience by laying out a clean list of pros and cons, the game sort of collapses under scrutiny because it looks so lame. I mean, if you look at it on paper, Death Stranding sounds dull and self-important. You deliver packages, you walk a lot. The characters are absolutely soulless husks, they don't talk like normal humans at all. Two of the only notes I have for Higgs, the kind of, I guess, big bad of the game, is he's a terrorist and he likes to lick people. The story absolutely could have finished 5 chapters earlier and been fine, and it's also stuffed with terminology that feels intentionally alienating, even though the core concept of its game and its premise really isn't all that confusing. The combat, Jesus wept, is it bad? It was always such a hindrance to get through. It has absolutely no flow to it at all. There were elements of it that did remind me of Metal Gear Solid 5, and then I was astounded because I kept remembering that that game came out 4 years before Death Stranding, and still, somehow, Death Stranding felt like a step back from it. It was an element of the game that constantly surprised me with how uninviting and unintuitive it was, and when mixed with the tedious, really lackluster boss encounters, you end up getting these sections where it's actually more engaging to just skip or run away from combat. I actually streamed the game a couple of times for a friend of mine, and when I was describing what I was actually doing in the game, I could literally hear how joyless it sounded. All I was doing was listing off these chores that I was doing. If someone told me that this was their least favourite game ever, I would immediately understand, until I remember how it felt to actually play the game. I don't know at what point it grabbed me, but oh boy, did it. As much as I or anybody else could dog on this game when looking at it on paper, I have to admit there was something really compelling about plotting a route across this game's beautiful but harsh terrain. The act of delivering packages, something that should be really mundane, is transformed into this series of small and tense problem-solving moments. Every rock matters, every slope matters, every stream matters, and when you actually make it where you're going, where you finally crest a hill and see your destination in the distance with a trail of player-made zip lines or generators, almost like breadcrumbs on a path, it's such an intensely pure feeling of happiness, it's crazy. Traversing those spaces and making those small DoorDash missions feels really meditative at times. It was even soothing, and I totally understand how people can say that this game helps them get to sleep. These missions are 100% elevated by the game's sound too. The game's audio is mostly composed from a few lengthened notes and environmental sound. There's running water, strong winds, rain that you know is warning you of impending BTs, volcanic gases bubbling up from these cracks in the earth. The level of detail in the sound is absolutely masterful, and it really helps envelop you into this world. But to me, the best use of audio is when all of that is drowned out by a song that plays. When you get to the end of a really long trek and you start hearing a song and you see the title pop up, it creates an emotional payoff that is really, really powerful in practice. The landscapes are stark and they're lonely and hauntingly beautiful in a way that reinforces the game's themes and Sam as a character without having to spell it out. I don't think I'd ever describe this game as fun in a conventional sense, but all of this makes it immersive in a way that really sneaks up on you. You don't notice it working until you're already invested and you find yourself wanting to go back onto the game and deliver more packages. To me, this is where the game was at its best. Just you walking from point to point, meeting these wacky characters and getting equipment upgrades in a world that is absolutely dripping in beauty. Even though some other players would disagree, and this is where the real Kojima meta-genius comes from. Kojima went on record before the game came out to say that Death Stranding was the first Strand-type game. I think in reference to the game's asynchronous multiplayer elements, those ziplines and generators I mentioned left behind by other players. And while those systems do reinforce the game's themes of connection, I don't think they're the most important part of what Kojima was trying to articulate. The true Strand element isn't just the structures or the signs themselves, but the conversations that actually form around this game. Everybody seems to latch onto a different part of Death Stranding. When people talk about the game, they're rarely talking about the same experience, even though they played the same title. I think explaining what you loved or hated about Death Stranding becomes this really meta way of reaching out, of trying to connect your experience to someone else's. And in that sense, the real Strand type gameplay happens outside the game itself, in the act of sharing interpretations and defending moments that meant something to you, even if you can't fully justify why. I know that some parts of it worked extremely well on me, while others felt those same parts were really unpolished, and being able to identify those parts, compiling them into a video like this, and putting it out for others to see is what really helps align me with that Strand ideology. It's a game about connection that refuses to connect easily. I can't really decide if it's good. I don't even know if I like it. I'm constantly bouncing between yes and no, kind of like the ball in that one game. I can only say that it mattered to me in ways that I didn't expect, and that somehow feels to me was the main purpose of Death Stranding.